Hi everyone, welcome to the Creative Help Podcast. My name is Francoise Helene. On this podcast, we talk about art, nature, music, literature, and well-being. And today I'm super excited that Melanie Charles, who's a children's book author, joins me on this episode. And we'll be talking about books, storytelling, and how they can influence children's well-being alongside their emotional and social development. So Mel is a children's book author, and she's currently working on some new materials that are coming out really soon. So that's super exciting. But yeah, thank you for joining me.
You're absolutely welcome, Fran.
So we met, it was during the pandemic, wasn't it? Or really close, I think at the beginning of the pandemic. And
Yes,
yeah, and
we worked at the same organization, but
yeah,
I never met you because you worked at a different time.
yeah,
And our friend, I think Christian, connected us both, who also
yeah,
worked with us at the same place, and we all had the same passion to publish
yeah.
books.
And yeah, you've been really supportive throughout all this time as well. So I'm really grateful for that.
As a you, I wouldn't have published my first book during COVID
Yeah.
without you and your support and us doing it together. It was amazing. So yeah, and it's that connection, I think, of and especially at that time. I mean, it was COVID.
Yeah.
I think publishing, sort of having a purpose, really sort of helped me get through. And just having a connection with people with shared experiences, but with shared values and goals. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
it was really uplifting. So, and now you've published. So, I mean, I'm here to interview you.
Yes.
But so let me just sort of step back a bit. So you're an author and a poet. You're
Yeah.
also an early years teacher, originally from New Brunswick in Canada. You live in London, and you've delivered therapeutic poetry workshops in community centres and at festivals across England, alongside storytelling workshops for children. You're also an advocate for nature, art, music, literature, and well-being.
Yeah.
And we can sort of start from there. So tell us a little bit about what inspired you to explore the links between storybooks or storytelling, children's well-being and development.
Yeah. I think I want to go back to my own childhood, really. But it just kind of brings me back to that moment growing up in that small village, East Canada. I had nature around me. And I spent so much time in nature, like my dad would do an ice rink in the backyard, and I would just go skate, look at the stars, sit on the swing. And I would do a lot of biking and just walk by the sea a lot and just get lost in an imaginative world as well. So I think going back to my childhood, this is why I love writing so much. It gives me the chance to really think and think about the different metaphors that, like in poetry or in children's books as well. And when I started learning English, I was like 12 years old, and I learned a lot of English by listening to lyrics from music as well. And then when I
Yeah.
was more confident in my English skills, then I started reading quotes. And I just remember reading quotes for hours and hours and really thinking about their meanings and just kind of reading them over and over again. And I think, yeah, being a tinker is then when you kind of imagine all of these stories in your head. And when you see them on paper, it becomes like a tangible thing, which is quite
Yeah.
amazing as well. It's my
Yeah.
love for imagination as a child, which has never left me. Yeah, I'm definitely still a thinker as well, and it's never really been harmful to me. It's just been a way for me to kind of think about like fairy tales
Mm.
and when I say fairy tales, it's not just like, the Prince Charming and the princess at the end. It's just like the other day I was just
Yeah.
writing my journal, and this like this cutest little robin just came and like sat on the bench next to me, or like flew on the bench
Yeah.
and stayed there for a little bit and was so playful. These type of things are like little windows of fairy tales that are more like reality to life. But
Little moments in time.
yeah, no, exactly. But yes, I think my combined love for imagination, and this is something that I love to do, is like my own form of entertainment. Just think
Mm.
and really, yeah, just imagine, create, develop new ideas. And also working with children. I've been working with children for a very long time, not necessarily like in the education industry. I was
Yeah.
also, I also work for charities, so indirectly with children, but kind of campaigning for children's rights and well-being and so on. Um, Kind of really has led me to writing books for children. But why I've started to do it recently is because now that I'm teaching children, I kind of realize that children can find a real sense of comfort within stories. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I work with the early years. So I work with children that are mostly 3 to 7 years old.
Mm.
And then I'll go, deeper in depth later on about children's social and emotional development and how stories benefits children's development in so many different ways. But in some, I think what inspired me to explore the link between storytelling and children's development and well-being is my past experience, my own life
Mm.
experience, my work with children, and also what I experienced myself, the stories that I found within my poetry. Writing a lot about my own emotions has really helped me as well. So I really believe in the power of literature, um, and how it can help not only children but adults too in so many different ways. And reading aloud with people really helps them express themselves, also provides like emotional release as well. But I think I feel a really deep connection to children in general, especially young children. So I'm like,
Yeah.
actually, picture books. It's a very fulfilling thing for me to do. And I'm also thinking about
Mm.
children who are isolated in hospitals as well, who only see, white walls sometimes
Yeah.
and don't
Yeah.
have they don't see nature much. There's not enough art in hospitals as well. And
Mm.
but book can really help children in many different situations and location across the world to immerse themselves in this beautiful story and bring a sense of comfort.
So it sounds like your childhood and nature has really influenced your sort of well-being and your well-being practice now.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how literature and well-being connect together for you?
Yeah, sometimes I almost prefer to write than saying things out loud. See, there's many different ways to express ourselves. The other day I was writing, I was feeling a bit melancholic, and I was just wondering, not thinking too much. I was just literally feeling melancholic. So I spent the evening alone with some candles and I wrote a poem. And this poem is about going for a walk on the heat and how I missed my niece a lot at the moment. And so
Mm.
sometimes it kind of It makes you more aware of the reasoning behind your emotions. Um, but if I go a little bit to the history of literature
Yeah.
and well-being, if I talk a little bit about reading aloud for healing, the concept in itself originated like many, many years ago. And it was the Greek philosophers that they were convinced that the power of healing through literature was very valid. And it started back in the 18th century where reading material were prescribed for various kinds of illnesses. Uh,
Mm.
so, it dates from a long time, but I just feel like it's something that's not been validated by some of, the health system as well, like
Yeah.
the importance of especially, literature, art, nature, and music is just so beneficial for human beings, and is not really been recognized enough, but it's been practiced since a long, long time ago, especially at a time where medicine wasn't as developed as it is today. So I'm not saying that it's a replacement to medicine or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I'm saying that it can definitely be helpful for people's well-being. And a lot of research do prove that too. And then there's a practice which is called bibliotherapy. Um, and that's when the readers, it can be poets, author, or it could be anyone really, like very attentively select the piece of writing. It can be poems or short stories, picture books, etc. And that helps people cope with their emotional well-being. And it really evokes many reflections. And sometimes even poetry is used in hospital as well to help people talk about difficult illnesses and things that, yeah, they wouldn't be. It's more like metaphorical. So
Yeah.
it's not so much like a direct conversation, which can actually be more frightening or uncomfortable. And also, I was reading, yeah, about literature and well-being, and reading for only 6 minutes can help reduce your muscle tensions. So that's why if you read before going to sleep, you can have a better night's sleep. I often read go before going to sleep, and I just kind of fall asleep while reading. A lot
Oh,
of
wow.
I'm like, oh my,
Yeah.
like then I wake up like an hour later. I'm like, gosh, I fell asleep. But yeah, it's a very calming and peaceful experience, I think, for the mind, for the body as well, and for the soul, of course. Um,
So you've covered a lot of things there. So, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that feeling of comfort, I
yeah,
suppose we start with that.
yeah,
Because I remember as a child, picking up books and school holidays and just lying in the grass and reading and just feeling connected, although, and I was quite an outgoing child. I think
yeah.
as an adult, I've become more solitary.
Mhm.
You're never really solitary when you're reading a book, are you? You're
Oh, yeah,
connected with the author and you feel like
yeah,
you're sharing something somewhere and you feel seen, don't you? And that's a lot about, I suppose, what I love about writing now is that we're seeing more diverse authors. So everyone can
yeah,
feel seen within the pages of a book. And
yeah,
and that's when I write, that's one of the things that I hope that if I could just touch one person in the
yeah,
way that I felt as a child
yeah,
and felt seen, so I try and write diverse characters. But
yeah,
so there's that real comfort, I think, as a child, and that feeling
yeah. No, I agree.
connected and
Yeah,
seen. I mean, literature in whatever form is powerful, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of brings me to some other thoughts. And this will bring me to children's emotional development. What I want to write about is something that's very meaningful. So yes, I want children to laugh when they read my book. Like in, you have visual joke as well. Most children, it will be like a parent reading to them or a caregiver or a friend, someone
Mm.
they know, or they go to the library and somebody's reading to them. But for me personally, I want my books to really evoke conversations about meaningful life situation. So that can be, it could be grief as well, because that is
Okay.
part of life. Um, but you still need funny parts and you need the story to flow. I think that a book should not just be like read from one end to another. I think it should be like sometimes I really enjoy reading books to the classroom and I have, all the
Yeah.
children looking at the pages and enjoying the story and they just sit back and relax and that can be really nice. But I think for me, some of the most meaningful moment when reading with children is when I have a few children surrounding me or I read with one child, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes children can really relate to the story. And what I love about children's books is that you don't necessarily use, like, the characters are not necessarily humans, like a
Yeah.
girl or boy. It can be like animals as well, and that can make the book more interactive and fun. So it's very metaphorical, but children can relate to some events in the books as well. And sometimes it can really help children to understand themselves and make them feel less alone if they read about a certain situation in a book. There's like there's a little book now. I'm sorry because I forgot the title of the book, sadly.
Yeah.
But it's a little girl who's got a bunny and then that bunny, like a fluffy toy bunny, and then
Yeah.
there's like characters they're trying to take the bunny away from her, but she wants to keep the bunny, and then she goes on an
Yeah.
adventure, and then it kind of teaches children um some important lessons about like kindness, understanding, empathy, um and also like detaching as well. Like
Yeah.
most young children, they'll have like a fluffy toy and they'll be like, oh, it's so precious to them. And it can be like a toy, it can be a book, or and
Yeah.
even detaching from their parents as well. And when you read with children, I think it shouldn't just be like a quick process. I think it can be at times. And sometimes children are really shy at the beginning and they just want to listen to the story. Um,
Mm.
it's a great opportunity to really listen to what children have to say and help them gain confidence in expressing themselves, like
Yeah.
whatever they want to say. Like children, young children, they really just say whatever's on their mind. They don't overthink, and sometimes it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me sometimes, but I still want to hear about, okay, it might not make sense to me, but like what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And books are a great conversation starter to really help them gain confidence. Um, yeah, and share their thoughts and express themselves in their own way. And also books, sometimes if I would say book, I'm thinking like, oh, okay, it's like a physical book that you hold, my favorite ones. But they come, they're very multisensory as well. They come in different medias like print, audio, video files as well. So they can really be interactive um with children and offer like a very playful experience as well.
Mm.
And whoever is reading with the children can decide what's more suitable for this child. Or so yeah, because some children are more sensitive to sound, or so books can be very inclusive as well.
Yeah.
It's where I'm getting at.
So you're saying that you think books then can help children also learn about certain things. I think you were getting to the
Yeah,
rabbit one about sharing and about
yeah, in a
that sort of,
very,
teaching. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think like that's what I'm doing with my book, but not so much like I'm not direct. And it's in a very, very subtle way. And
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is the story as well, and to make it fun and engaging, and
Yeah.
like picture book, especially because you have images, it's like every spread when you open the book, it's like a theatrical experience. That's how it should
Yeah.
really be projected. Um, to children. Um,
Yeah. Like the tiger that came to tea.
oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
such a big,
Yeah,
it
or you
always
can,
comes into my
yeah.
mind.
Yeah, or the
Uh,
Gruffalo as well. You have like, the little mouse, and then
yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yeah. And there's lessons in all of them.
yeah,
Isn't it?
yeah,
But I think,
yeah,
I mean, I know we've talked about, story writing in your books and things. You're
yeah,
aiming to go even further with your books, aren't you? Still with the
yeah,
humor and the subtlety, but with
yeah,
the storytelling having a real positive impact on
yeah, yeah.
supporting a child's positive behavior with the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think that so now I'll try to, I want to talk a little bit more about like social development, more
Yeah,
specifically. I suppose. But yeah, I think through books it really helps children understand their place in the world as well, and within society. Mm. Yeah, and it can also help children recognize their own emotion, and empathy, I think, is a big topic within children's book as well, because young children, between 3 and 5, they learn a lot about empathy, and the meaning of it, and how to be like kind and
yeah.
empathetic um with others as well. So within the books they can, if you have, there's like the giraffe can dance as well. So that's about a giraffe, and she's trying to dance, but she has all these other animals around her, and um
Yeah.
who are like laughing at her, and like, so, but I think like in these types of stories the children can see that, oh, like, oh no, the giraffe, like, her friends are not really being kind because they're laughing at her, and things like that. So that still really embraces storytelling, but
Yeah.
also communicate these important messages to children as well, and it helps them to understand like what's the meaning between like themselves and interacting with others as well. Um,
And then
and
it's important to talk about it as you spoke about earlier, isn't it? It's,
yeah,
reading a book and then having that, obviously not laboring it, it's still children, but certainly helping them be able to connect those dots of the
yeah,
giraffe and them
yeah,
feeling a little left out.
yeah. And it also helps like children to be able to, identify difficult situation or some issues as well, and kind of helps them learn how to cope with
Yeah.
these situation in a creative way as well. And if we talk about social development, communication and language development is a big part of social development. So when reading books, I just really love when sometimes I ask like, oh, do you know what this word mean? Or so I love when children are like, what does this word mean? I'm like, oh yeah, let's talk about that, and it helps them learn new words as well, and it helps them elaborate on what they want to say. And then there's like, because when children are still developing their language, especially, sometimes it can create some frustrations within them,
Yeah.
and then they might express their frustration in a physical way, for example. But if you help them understand social situation, and help them express their thoughts so they can gain confidence, then they
Mm.
can express themselves to others much better, so they can, and not just to other children but to adults as well, if they're upset about something, instead of crying.
Yeah, see new ways
Yeah,
of reacting and
yeah, they
responding to the
yeah,
situation.
exactly. Yeah, they
Yeah,
can communicate through words, and that is clearer as well to others what they mean, and also give compliments to others,
yeah.
that kind of, that's quite kind to give a genuine compliment. And also there's some research that shows that share reading with preschool children will energize the left area of the brain, so that will boost
Mm.
expressive language and social emotional integration as well.
Oh,
So
wow.
that brain as well. So it's not just like, this is like tangible research showing that and explaining more in detail how reading um,
Yeah.
really awakes a different area of the brain for children.
So that sounds like, I mean, I've never really looked at storytelling for kids in sort of this way. But
Mm,
if you think about, parents are so short on time and
yeah,
are not with their children, they've got to work. Life is challenging, and
yeah,
they're not with their children all day throughout the day. Choosing the right books will allow them to then, because they're not role modeling for their child to see how some of these interactions happen. But
yeah,
if you choose the right book, you can start to help your child
yeah,
see that there's certain ways to respond to situations. And
yeah,
then, they're a good conversation starter. And
yeah,
also there's not just one way to respond as well, multiple books
yeah,
looking at something from a different viewpoint,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
allow
Yeah.
a child to have flexibility.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's why I think when reading a book, especially if you read with one or a few children, it's like,
Mm,
to have these conversation and just really be open-minded, and sometimes letting, the children finish the story as well. So it's not like,
right.
it's just like it's not a book is like, I love books. I love books, but there's just so much more within a book. So books is more about an experience. And there's also
Mm,
many research that proves as well that, especially if you're a parent reading, taking the time to read with your child, it really increases the bond between them two as well. So it's another way to
mm,
engage. And even sometimes some topics are not easy for the parents or the adult that is
mm.
with the book as well. And it can really help on both sides. It can help them recognize their feelings and comprehend them as well.
Yeah.
Um, and it can give children ideas on, how to manage their emotion, how to handle them in a healthy way as well.
Mm,
But sometimes the children will also come with some suggestion as well, and they love sharing their experience. Um, and also when people repress their emotion, when if they read like a passage that calls to mind a lived experience or feeling,
yeah.
is in itself an emotional release as well, and that will increase well-being.
Mm,
So yeah, I think when it comes to emotional development as well, it's just, a very storybooks can really help children understand themselves, their emotions, and talk about them. And any emotions as well, like happy emotions, sad emotions.
mm,
It can really be an important and a meaningful experience, and very conversational as well. And it comes from different angle as well. And yeah,
mm.
so, but yeah, there's
So if
lots
you
of,
wanted to have a conversation that was challenging with a child about maybe their behavior you'd witnessed or
yeah,
something you were concerned about, you could just start with finding a book that sort of shares the
yeah,
message of what you're trying to have a conversation about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and do that over time. It doesn't have to be there in that moment as you're reading the story. It could just
Yeah.
be,
Yeah. It just comes naturally a lot of the times. And
yeah,
sometimes you read the same book, but sometimes I read a book with the children and I change the words in the book and I change the character like the
excellent.
characters in the books. And there's a different conversation with the same book every time as well. Um,
Wow.
there's also some research that shows that art, just looking at something that you find beautiful, so like a
Mm,
painting, for example, um, like releases dopamine in your brain. So if we compare that to storybooks where images are very important in
mm,
course, even when children just look at the images within the book as well, that alone can, increase their well-being. They're just like,
yeah.
especially books, they're usually very colorful. And that there's fun characters like an owl and a squirrel. And it's good to try different books as well. But yeah, I think, the conversation it has to be natural as well as not something that you want to push too much.
Yeah.
Uh, just to say that especially books and picture books are not just like books to read as well. They can really, it's an experience and engagement with children to help them
Mm,
enhance their language, learn new words, for them to share their thoughts, be really listened to, and increase their confidence. And it's
yeah.
not just parents and child, it's anyone who loves to read with children as well. But I do really genuinely believe that children should have access to books as well. And that kind of brings me back to that memory of you that you just talked about, you lying on the grass and reading books. So,
Mm,
and just with a book alone, you can be entertained in so many different ways. And books can be a solitary experience, which is fine too, because it's nice to get to know yourself and just
yeah.
interact with the book and get lost in your imagination as well. But we one thing not to forget is that it can really be, it's not just a solitary experience. It can just be a familial experience or between a friend and a child,
Mm,
peer and a child, caregiver and a child, whoever reads, which anyone who reads with
yeah.
children.
So, Fran, what are you working on now? What's your next thing?
Yeah, so at the moment, yeah, like I mentioned previously, I'm still writing poetry, but it's poetry pamphlets, based on research. I'm writing about nature and well-being. That's going to be my
Yeah.
next poetry pamphlet. I'm going to go into details into the stories as well, because they're not out yet.
Yeah.
But yes, I'm writing on some really lovely stories for children. It's picture books, so it's for children from 3 to 6 years, 6 years old. And I've also been writing meditation for children as well, and I've just been publishing
Excellent.
that on YouTube. It's like bedtime meditation, so the
Yeah.
children are meant to fall asleep. I think I will make an audiobook at some point from them, but
Yeah.
at the
Right.
moment they're just on YouTube, so anybody can access them and listen to.
Where on YouTube would someone find them?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is Francoise Helene Poetry.
So you'll
And
link it in the show
I
notes.
will, yeah, I'll definitely put it in the show notes as well. Um, but it's funny because my last one I was recording it and I was looking after my friend's dog and the dog
Mm.
fell asleep. So I was like,
Oh,
maybe I should,
bless.
yeah, and then you can hear the dog snore. So it's very, very sweet. And
Oh, I
I've
love
received
that.
some good feedback about the meditation
Yeah.
as well, but it's there on YouTube and I'm just kind of doing this once in a while, and I enjoy putting them out there. But the main things, yeah, is the picture books. I'm really excited. It's quite a new adventure for me, like going from poetry to writing picture books for
Yeah.
children. But it's been very exciting and it fulfills my soul a lot. And I hope
Mm.
that I can share them with as many children in the world as I can. They'll
Yeah.
be in French and English as well.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm
Okay.
very excited. Yeah. But yeah, it's been so lovely chatting to you, Mel, as always.
It's yeah, it's great hearing where you're sort of going.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
yeah,
It's
I'm
it's nice
excited.
to know about your writing as well, and because you have a book that will come out very soon. Um,
Yeah, so it'll be
uh,
1st of May. I'm
yeah,
expecting my next date for my second book. So yeah,
lovely. And that's for middle grade children, or
middle grade. So this
okay.
one's called My Life as a Superhero. Uh,
Oh, brilliant.
yeah, so just a young boy who grew up thinking he was a superhero, but his powers have never emerged.
Okay.
And it's his 11th birthday, and he discovers he's just like everyone else.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yeah,
I'm
so
very intrigued. Yeah, I love
yeah,
the title. Yeah, lovely. So it'll be, yeah, it's very exciting to come to see that come to life very soon. I'm
yeah,
really excited for it. But yeah, thank you so much for, yeah, for listening to me, and my words. I really appreciate it. And for you, because you're in Australia at the other end of the world.
I am.
Um, but and for you to take the time to yeah, have this conversation with
Always.
me.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I think that we will leave you there for today. And I'll definitely put a link to Mel's book in the podcast description and a bit more information. You're on Instagram and any other?
I am.
So I'll
Instagram.
also put your Instagram in the link and as well as mine. But thank you so much
Yeah.
for listening, everybody. And until next time.
See ya. Bye.